Hey, what's up, guys? So I just watched the Pelicans Celtics game. I'm gonna do a reaction to that. I'm also gonna talk about idea that I thought of after the game that would be the perfect trade between these two teams, but it actually can't happen, and I'll talk about that as well. So first of all, that was a great game. Probably one of the best games I've watched this year. Pelicans were down. They were close in the first quarter. Then they kind of in the third quarter that things the second quarter going into the third quarter, they really kind of let things slip. They fell behind by 24 in this game. But then in the fourth quarter, they went on this huge run. Celtics went ice cold, couldn't buy a shot for seemed like most of the start of the fourth quarter. And then a lot of great plays individually made by both Tatum and Zion Williamson to send the game to overtime. But ultimately, the Pelicans came out on top and sealed the game late with the three from Brandon Ingram. So these are two teams that, to me, I think are going to have bright futures in this league. They've got some of the best stars in the game in Tatum and Zion. They've got great supplementary pieces on the roster, or not pieces, but the supplementary number two guys that are all-stars in Brandon Ingram and Jaylen Brown. But there's some things that these teams need to do if they really want to take the next level forward. And I'm going to talk about that. So let's talk about the Celtics first. So I've talked about the Celtics a lot in a video I made earlier. I kind of broke down everything that the team has done since the big three were shipped off to the Brooklyn Nets and evaluating that. It's a two-part video. If you want to, you can check it out. But basically, my conclusion is that they were on the path to an excellent rebuild, but then Danny Ainge sat on his draft picks, and now it's cost the team because they don't have a third star because since Gordon Hayward walked away, Kyrie Irving walked away, and Al Horford walked away. A lot of people are using Kemba Walker as the scapegoat. I don't think Kemba is the problem with this team. He played pretty well today. They did not lose this game. I know he missed that three at the end, which people are going to probably be bashing him, but the reality of this game is that the reason the Celtics lost is because they had nobody that could stop Zion Williamson in the second half. He could do anything he wanted to in the paint. And it goes to the idea that this team really needs a big man. And to me, it's completely, if the story that they were offered Miles Turner for Gordon Hayward in a sign and trade and they didn't take that, because Danny Ainge also wanted Oladipo. That is just inexplicably bad as a general manager to decline that, because Miles Turner would be perfect for this team. He's a good individual defensive player. He's not a star center by any means, but they don't need a guy like that because they have one already in Jason Tatum. And Jaylen Brown can do that on other nights as well. So that Danny Ainge botched that one. It looks like Nesmith had a good game, so I feel a little more optimistic about him, but still, Romeo Langford, I don't know where he is on this team. He's probably on the G League team developing. Just shows that, why did you use one of those draft picks to trade for somebody like a Kawhi Leonard or an Anthony Davis or something to that effect that would have really helped this team? So, not 100% sure there. For the Pelicans, so the Pelicans, and this is the point I'm going to make with this pretend trade. So the Pelicans are so much more effective when they use a small ball lineup where they have Zion Williamson as their point center. And I thought they played really well when they had Melly as the stretch four, because he's a guy he's a good enough defender because of his length, but he's more a guy that can space the floor. Because if you have somebody like Zion Williamson, who is just a magician in the paint with his left-handed moves, his ability to hang in the air, quickness to get around defenders, you don't need another bruising big like a Steven Adams. So Steven Adams didn't play today, but when they really started to utilize the stretch four of Nikola Melli and Josh Hart, who had a very good game, especially in the fourth quarter. He's not a four, but he's still a guy that can stretch the floor. When they have guys like that, this team is successful. When this team runs at a fast pace, they're also successful. This is something that I talked about in a previous video as well. So I was thinking about this after the game. the perfect trade between these two teams would be a Steven Adams trade to the Celtics. And the Pelicans, in return, get back some young players, some guys that could possibly space the floor. Because the Pelicans don't need Steven Adams. He's a good player, but ultimately he slows down the pace and hurts the floor spacing. But the Celtics are a team that could really use Steven Adams because he's a guy that gives you a big body that can bang with the guys in the paint that are going to be thrown at the Celtics. He's also a pretty good creator as well. He makes a lot of good plays on offense. I mean, and has a very effective floater. So that would really help their team as well. But they don't have something like that. They're relying on Robert Williams, who's improved, but he's still got liabilities. Tristan Thompson, who is kind of, at this point, he's on the decline. I mean, I don't know if he's on the decline, but he's not going to ever be any better than he is right now. And then Daniel Tice, who's serviceable, but he's got his issues as well. So I was thinking about it. What if the Celtics made a trade for Steven Adams? I think that would be a really good idea that could potentially fix some solutions on this team. But the only thing is that, and I did a little mock trade where I tried to test this out on tradenba.com. The trade that I put together was Steven Adams to the Celtics, and then the Pelicans received Daniel Tice, Romeo Langford. The reason being is because Tice can provide a little bit more floor spacing relative to Steven Adams and can, clear the paint for Zion, as I discussed. Romeo Langford is a guy that, they might as well take a flyer on because they're a team that's trying to develop its young players, see what they have in them. Celtics, I don't really see any clear path for Langford contributing anytime soon, so why are you using him? As well as a second-round pick, just because I think that's it, and the Celtics need a big so bad that they'd be willing to part with the second-round pick in a few years for that. But this trade cannot happen, unfortunately, because Steven Adams signed a contract extension before the season started after, I think it was August 6th was what it said. So because of that, this trade cannot happen, and Steven Adams cannot be traded at the trade deadline. So the Celtics, they're going to have to look for another big. Obviously, I think that would be something that could be a good option for them. And the money would work with their trade exception that they got from the Hayward to Hornets deal. But the reality is that until Boston gets any kind of center, I don't see how they're going to really be a contender in the Eastern Conference. I've seen a couple of their games this year, and it's not working for the small ball lineups aren't really working for them. I think they're going to have somebody, especially when you're going up against Joel Embiid, against. You don't have anybody really stopping you on the Nets, but the key to beating the Nets is to have a big man that could be dominant against them. And I'm not certain that Tice, Thompson, or Williams could be that guy for the Celtics because they're all relatively mediocre players. I would probably rate them at B- to C level centers compared to some of the guys like a Miles Turner who would be a B+, a Steven Adams who would be a B+. So, but this could be a potential deal that they could look for in the future, but I think it would make a lot of sense for both these teams. Pelicans could play small because Zion is just so massive. He doesn't, even though he's 6'6", he's already got enough strength to clear the paint anyway. But interesting idea for both teams, but I think that we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. See if the Celtics do anything they need to. I think the Pelicans might see what they can do to increase floor spacing. It's obviously not going to be with Steven Adams, but maybe you can ship off somebody like Hernan Gomez instead. So, all right, well, that's all I got. Let me know if you like this kind of stuff, and and thanks for watching. See you guys.